You started a career path and have been grinding away, maybe all the way to the top. But you've decided the career you've dedicated your life to isn't the career you want to dedicate your life to. Now is just the beginning. Starting out or starting fresh. It's time to become the work experience kid. This is going to be a very interesting chat with Scott Newman. I know this because he's been an automotive journo for his entire career and he's worked at some big publications. So of course you want to get a big dog on to talk about what big dogs do. I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot about what it takes to become an automotive journalist. But the issue here is I'm not really into cars. Two sayings come to mind though. Fake it till you make it, and you only know what you know. So maybe Scott will give me the confidence to get into this job, because how would I know if it is or isn't for me if I've never tried it? Let's unpack a little bit more with Scott Newman. Oh, real quick, remember the website workexperiencekid.com is where you can find heaps on the podcast. You can get involved, you can support it. You can also learn more about the guests that appear on the pod, for example, Scott's social media handles and where you can see more about him. You can also support their businesses like Steve Melder, who is an automotive advocate who can buy or sell cars on your behalf, save you running around. And if you want to know a bit more about what an advocate does in the car space, listen to Steve Melder's episode. Or if you want to hire him or any of the guests, workexperiencekid.com, hit the guests tab. Scott, can you briefly tell us what it is you're doing now?
Well, I'm currently a motoring journalist, but about mid last year, I got made redundant from my role then, which gave me an opportunity to reassess somewhat. And I decided to try the freelance route. Basically, I gave myself to the end of the year to see, is this workable, sustainable? And happily, so far, it has been. I tend to do very similar things to being fully employed versus working for myself. But I do enjoy the flexibility of working for myself. Allows me to sort of choose my own projects a little bit. So, yeah, still a motoring journalist, but just now in a freelance capacity.
I find that people, whilst you might be doing the same job, feel so much freer as a freelancer.
It's a big conversation, maybe, the freelance versus the, and both have pros and cons. And previous to now, freelance probably wouldn't have worked because I just had a son. And, you want a bit more certainty. But equally, there are some really great things about freelance. The ability to choose your own hours, the ability to, if you are working around the clock for whatever reason, there's chances are it's because you've got lots of work on and you're being paid for it, which is great, rather than being on a set salary. It's just the uncertainty of not having that known income coming up. But equally, I've been very fortunate with some great partners that have continued to give me work. So, yeah, so far, touch wood, the freelance life has been good to me.
In a freelance sense, or working for yourself, you're probably doing less of that mundane, boring activities that come with a full-time salaried job where you kind of have to be sitting at a desk and you're just doing some busy work at times?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a great role previously. We'll probably talk about it at some stage. I was at car sales and I had a great role. No if, buts or maybe. But equally, in any job, there's bits you enjoy and bits you don't. And the admin, booking test cars for a 8-10 strong team and juggling all that. The big benefit of freelance is, in a general sense, you only have yourself to worry about. Not the same with every role, but certainly with my role, suddenly I have myself to worry about, which can be quite selfish, but it does free up the mind somewhat, which is nice.
Yeah, for sure. I want to unpack some of what you said throughout our conversation, but maybe we should start at the start. I'm thinking of considering becoming a motoring journalist.
Don't take my job.
I'm not sure I'll take your job, but let's see how we go.
Yeah.
Let's start by asking you, how long have you been doing this?
I started professionally January 2011, the very start of 2011. So it's at 14 and a half years now. I'd done a couple of things prior to that, but yeah, I guess I got my first job as a motoring journalist in January 2011.
Did you always want to be a motoring journalist?
Yeah, I did. Not always. It's funny. As a small kid, I loved cars, which is pretty normal, but also loved riding. My mum will tell you that in prep and kindy, I'd write these big long stories about what we did on the weekend and stuff like that. We'd go four-wheel driving as a family. My dad was into that. So, I'd write these big long stories about these adventures. So I guess the writing was on the wall maybe quite early. And then as I got a bit older, I actually maybe early teens, I wanted to be a video game journalist. I'd read video game magazines all the time, playing PlayStation, whatnot. Again, pretty normal. But I really loved the idea, I guess, of reviewing stuff. If I look back and assess it now, once we got to driving age, I fell back in love with cars and driving. And the catalyst was I picked up a copy of Motor magazine. It was early 2003. And I read this, and this was sort of the first real car magazine I'd gotten. I'm like, what is this? I have to do this. I have to do this. This seems like my calling. And I guess we'll go through the process, but happily, a lot of things fell my way that it managed to be a reality. Not everyone, not everyone can say they've got their dream job, but I'm very fortunate to be able to say that.
That's amazing. It's like the universe is drawing you to it through all these different experiences. So I'm assuming you always wanted to be a journalist of sorts.
It does seem that way. And it's funny, I'll tell a story about a mentor and a friend of mine, Jesse Taylor, when I did work experience at Wheels. He said, I could take or leave the cars, but I always would want to be in that stage magazine production. And at the time, I was 22, 23. I thought he was nuts, driving Ferraris. That was the cool thing, right? Now I totally get it. There's a real joy to the production of content. So I think you're right in that, obviously I love cars, I love this industry, but if I couldn't do this for it, if they banned cars tomorrow, I love music. I could maybe do content around music. Maybe I could do content around gaming. Maybe I could do content around another interest, something like that. I think there is definitely a creative drive in people in this industry.
So you pretty much jumped straight into journalism?
Yeah, I did. It's all I've ever done. So at this stage, I hope it doesn't go away because I don't know how to do anything else. To give some backstory to that. So I went to university. I did a combined degree of journalism and finance because I did journalism because I wanted to be a motoring journalist.
And what about the finance side?
Well, I didn't really think it would happen, to be honest. It's a pretty long shot to go and get your dream job. I wasn't one of these people that went all in, all the chips in, stuff like that. I tried to be sensible. So I'm like, well, if I don't get my dream job, what do I do? I enjoyed economics and finance at school and university. So I thought I can go and get a sensible job at the end of it. And it didn't hurt. It exposed me to other things. So that was good. So yeah, people do go a bit, what the hell? But so I graduated with journalism and finance degree, but I actually got my first job before I finished uni. So it was all a waste of time, maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
But it set you up with a lot of skills that a lot of creatives don't have, and that's the finance side and the business side and how to manage a business.
Yeah, especially in this industry. I mean, there's so much to the automotive industry. Like motoring journalism is essentially reviewing cars, but it helps, I think, a lot to have and the older I get, the more people I meet, the more contacts I get. There is so much that goes into it. The creation of any car, there's the engineering side of it, there's obviously the financial side of it, there's the marketing side of it, and then obviously the finished product that you then drive. So I think it does help to at least attempt to be able to have conversations around the broader industry rather than just, what does the car look like and what does it drive like? How did it end up? Why were these decisions made? I always find that quite fascinating. So
fair enough, and that's quite often lost elsewhere. You don't know to ask those questions, don't know what's involved if you don't have that knowledge. Do you need a qualification to become a motoring journalist? Obviously, you have the journalism degree.
No, you don't. I think nowadays in most industries, the qualification maybe helps, it's maybe evidence of application. You've gone through the processes of studying. Certainly, okay, obviously nursing, doctor, the stuff like that, you obviously learn very applicable skills. In this instance, did I learn much in university that directly transferred to what I do now? No, not really. I learned quite a bit of things at university indirectly. Like I would go to my lecturers and ask them questions about stuff I was writing for extracurricular stuff, stuff I was doing to sort of write for my own enjoyment. And that was actually probably more helpful than the lectures. The other thing about motoring journalism is people come from all aspects. I've got friends who came from engineering and they came into the car side that way. Auto mechanic, they came to it from that way. They came from other content areas. Maybe they were a news journalist and they became a motoring journalist. So it's a broad church. There are motoring journalism specific courses now, not so much in Australia, but certainly in the UK, which would certainly be helpful. But long story short, you don't need, by any stretch of the imagination, a specific qualification to be a motoring journalist. No.
This is good for me, not having a journalism degree, to potentially see if I could become a motoring journalist. Scott, straight out of uni, you got into journalism. What was your first job?
My first job was staff journalist at a classic car magazine called Unique Cars. Some people may recognise that. It was primarily a classifieds. This was 2010, 2011. Car sales, Facebook Marketplace, Gumtree were just sort of in their infancy. So for many people, if they wanted to buy a car, especially like an enthusiast car, they'd go to Just Cars, Unique Cars, the big thick magazines full of ads and pictures. But there was a content section of that, and I managed to get a role there, and I spent 2.5 years there as staff journalist. So that was my training ground. Because it's quite a small industry, there is a degree of good fortune required and knowing the right people. And it happens that one of my best friends at school, his uncle was the world's preeminent motoring journalist, a man named Peter Robinson. He's an Australian man, but he was editor of Wheels for a couple of decades during its heyday. He moved to Europe and became essentially one of probably the top 5 preeminent motoring journalists. He would have the CEO of every company in his contact book, and they would pick up the phone if he asked, right? That's the sort of level we're talking about. He actually got in touch with me because he knew I was friends with Sam. Shout out to Sam Robinson. He got in touch and was talking about some ideas and mentioned, had you ever thought about work experience? I was like, I'd love to, but what do you do? Who do you call? So again, he put me in contact with the editor of Wheels. I did work experience there. I then met a couple of guys at Motor, which was my love. I mentioned the first magazine I bought was a copy of Motor. He put me, because they shared an office, he put me in touch with one of the guys there. I did a couple more weeks of work experience there. Nathan Ponchard was deputy editor at Motor at that time. He was then moving to a new role at Unique Cars as editor. He needed a junior to come on. He hired me. So I guess that's a very short synopsis of it, but I think you can see a lot of things kind of went right, and maybe I'll throw it in while I think of it. There's an element of luck, but if you want to get into motoring journalism, I guess the key thing is take advantages of the opportunities as they're presented. I paid my way to go and do work experience in Sydney, which at the time felt, someone said, oh, well, you spent your own money to do that. Well, yeah, it was like a dream. Like, I didn't even think twice about it. And again, the role came up. Was it my dream role? No, I wanted to work at Wheels and Motor, but take the opportunities that present themselves as they come up, because it is quite a small industry.
And also take advantage of your network if you can.
Yeah, I guess the key thing there is attempt to make a network and then take advantage of it, which I think is easier now with social media. Like I, at that time, had no idea, like, what do I do? Just ring up the editor of Wheels? Like, I don't have his number. I don't even know how to contact him. Whereas these days, I could send an email, but it would probably just sit in an inbox for umpteen weeks because people are busy. Whereas now, obviously, you can DM people on social media, you can comment on their posts, you can find them on LinkedIn. It's easier to find that access.
You did your work experience, you took advantage of your network. Tell us your career progression from there and your first job through to now.
Okay, so after a couple of years, this is where good fortune comes into it again. It's a common theme. Basically in mid-2013, Nathan Ponchard left, he'd gone back to Wheels, and I was in limbo a little bit. My role changed a little bit. It wasn't quite what I was after. I was probably looking for the next thing, and the decision was made to move all the Sydney magazines to Melbourne. The motoring titles, at least, Wheels, Motor, 4x4. There were a couple of others, and obviously that was unfortunate for many people because they didn't want to uproot their families. So that led to quite a large turnover in the staffing. Motor was struggling a bit at that time, but it essentially landed on my doorstep. They needed all new staff for Motor, and it was moving to the building that I was. It's just kind of a funny story in that they actually changed the whole office. As a part of this, they did this restructure and changed the office. And my desk was the only one that didn't move, which was quite funny. So, yeah, they made me apply for the editor role of Motor, which I didn't want because I didn't want to be editor. I wanted to be deputy editor. They'd made deputy editor redundant, so
Sure.
Corporate politics. I ended up being associate editor.
Why didn't you want to be editor?
I didn't feel I was ready. I had been 2.5 years as staff journalist, and editor felt a lot of pressure. It's all on you. at least in my recollection. Whereas the man that became editor, Dylan Campbell, who's now one of my dearest friends, he had a lot more runs on the board, even though we were only, what were we? I think he was 25 and I was 26 or no, maybe a bit older. What was that? I don't know, 26, 27. We were very young, but he'd been a journo since he was 18. So he was much more ready for that path of take on that responsibility. So he became editor, I became associate editor. And for the next 7 years or so, we had the time of our lives. We drove the world's fastest, most expensive cars, lots of time on track, lots of making really cool stories. The further we get from it, I think the more we did appreciate it at the time. We knew how lucky we were. For them, I think it was a bit of a roll of the dice. Motor was struggling, print was struggling, so they hired this bunch of kids to see what we could do. And I think we lasted longer than many people thought we would, and we had a hell of a lot of fun doing it, and a lot of stress as well. A lot of late nights, a lot of very, very long hours. We got paid relatively very little money, but we were doing what we'd always dreamed of, which was fantastic. Then corporate reshuffles came on. All the titles ended up under one umbrella called Which Car. So I became road test editor for the group, Wheels, Motor and 4x4. That lasted about 18 months. And then I moved to a very similar role, road test editor at Car Sales. Moved to Car Sales at the start of 2022 and effectively ran their road test department. So, booked the cars, reviewed a lot of cars, video work, organised their big tests, that sort of stuff. So a bit of a logistics role, but also still a lot of content as well. And then, as I mentioned, got made redundant. Here we are now. So I guess that, in a nutshell, is the career progression.
That's quite a career over, last 15 or 16 years or so. What's involved in, booking cars?
That's a really good question, actually. Every manufacturer in Australia has what they call a press fleet. So they will have a couple of examples of the various cars they sell. Not every, it turns over. And so the cars they have on fleet tend to be their newest ones. So they'll have a fleet of vehicles in the capital cities, primarily in Melbourne and Sydney, that they then lend out to journalists, primarily. They use them for other things as well, marketing purposes. If you see a car on the telly, this program's been sponsored by XYZ, that's probably a press car. There's a press office, we ring them up and say, can we book car XYZ for a week or 2 weeks or whatever? They say, no problem. Sometimes they ask what you're going to be doing with it. You drive it, and then you give it back. So that's what's involved with booking cars. But like I said, at Car Sales, we'd have 8 or 10 cars per week go through the office. Sometimes you have long-term test cars, which can be 3, 4, 6 months, which give you a lot better exposure to a vehicle and allow you to sort of get into much more detail. But yeah, that's generally the process.
Is there any pressure to have a good review? Like, you've got a new car that's come out, it's a piece of shit, but you've been given access to this car. Do you feel like you have to give some, there's always positives, right? But do you feel like you have to be more positive?
No, there's a lot to that question. There are some companies that really don't like criticism. They can get very, very touchy about criticism.
Sure.
It's kind of their problem. Having the support of your higher-ups is really important. So as long as the person at the top has editorial integrity as, one of their key tenets, you're fine. Because, if it does happen, we're going to pull our advertising, we're going to not give you any cars, blah, 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 blah. Those threats have always been made. Generally, companies are fine with criticism because they're not silly. They know where their car in general is deficient. Mm-hmm. Or why it's deficient. They ran out of money, they had different targets, they stuffed up XYZ, etc., etc. They know. So the criticism generally doesn't take them as a surprise. I think the most important thing is how you present that criticism. So if you wrote the thing was a piece of shit, that's not good. Don't do it in that frame.
But if you've got a Tarago and you're saying, hey, the acceleration's pretty poor, well, you're not going to be, take it to a Tarago to a racetrack. You're probably going to fill it with kids and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably, let's take a Tarago. If that performance is so poor that it, struggles to keep up with traffic, if you're going up a hill with 6 kids on board, it's like really revving out and you're using a heap of fuel, that's more than a fair criticism, For what the car's intended purpose is, that is a flaw in its makeup. The fact that it can't do 0 to 100 k's an hour in 5 seconds, who cares? That would be more a case of, it's got the side opening doors for the kids and they only open halfway. Well, that's a pretty major flaw. That's a serious flaw. for a car like that. So the main thing about reviewing any car is performance of intended function. What is this car intended to do, and how well does it do it? You don't criticise a Ferrari because it can't go off-road, and you can't criticise a Land Cruiser because it doesn't go around a racetrack. That's not fair and valid criticism. As long as your criticisms are reasonable, you don't tend to get much pushback. As long as it's framed in a respectful manner. We found in our testing that this was not up to the quality of its rivals. Again, that's fair and justified criticism saying this. I mean, one thing my pet peeve a little bit is, and I guess what I've been told, one of Nathan Ponchard's key lessons to me was, it's not about what you like and don't like. It's about what's good and bad. Like, for instance, I can say a car has a really firm ride, okay? So it jiggles you around over the bumps. That is objectively a finding, okay? This car jiggles me around. I don't like that. I like a comfy car. I know people who actually quite like that. They like that greater connection with the road. So therefore, I think that's a good example of, you got to take yourself out of it. It's about what the car is. So yes, that's a finding. The ride is firm. It's not necessarily up to me to say whether that's good or bad, because that's going to be up to you. You can then use that information to go, well, hey, I quite like a car that does that. I appreciate that, or that doesn't sound like the car for me. So I guess that's tied into this question of, yeah, criticism's fine, but remember, you're making observations, you're reviewing something objectively. It's not necessarily about what you want. And I think it's fine to put your own personality in it. I think this car looks ugly. Well, okay, cool. But really, who cares? If people think it's ugly, they won't buy it. To get back to your question, yes, there is a certain amount of pressure because there are PR departments for a reason. They want you to go and write a really nice review, and they do everything in their power to influence you to do that. But I don't think there's not the pressure that maybe people think.
And I guess there's a difference between editorial and commercial as well, right? If you've got a commercial agreement to drive this car, you're going to be a little bit more positive. But if it's purely editorial, you can say whatever you like.
Yeah, absolutely. The lines are becoming blurrier. Back in the old days, okay, so I'm talking 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, outlets, magazines back then, they got a heap of advertising budget from the manufacturers. They got a heap of sales revenue from big magazine sales, and then they spent their money doing what they wanted to do. As the advertising revenue shrank, because, manufacturers want a better bang for their, advertising buck, and as the sales revenue shrank, obviously there's more and more pressure to find that money, and then things became more collaborative. The manufacturer would foot more of the bills for things. It does become grayer. To give you an insight, which I think is probably relevant and probably might help you decide if you want to do this job.
Yeah.
How things generally work is and a manufacturer will want to release a new car. So it invites all the various publications. It might be between 10 and 30 people. They will fly you somewhere. Could be Melbourne, could be Sydney, could be the Outback, could be even overseas. They fly you there, they put you up in a nice hotel, they pay for everything. You drive the car, you come home, you write your review, you do your video. So in a sense, that can raise eyebrows. Oh, wow, look, the manufacturers, you fly business if you fly overseas, not domestically, but who cares? It's a short flight. You get put up in a very nice hotel, get fed some very nice food, which is all part of them. Like I mentioned, they're trying to do their best to sway you, to influence you. Although part of it, I think, is the PRs themselves actually just really like staying in nice hotels and eating nice food.
Oh, for sure. I'd be doing that if I was organising something.
Yeah, exactly. They're not going to put themselves in the Best Western, which I would be perfectly happy with. I don't really care. So you can live a very good lifestyle, and then if it's up to you how much that influences you. Most people in the industry who have been in the industry a long time, they don't really care. It doesn't influence them. My preference is to just book the car myself and drive it myself. You get more time in it. You get to control the process because, again, it's all tightly controlled. The roads they use, the roads they choose to use, how long you drive the car, that's all done very carefully. It's only reasonable. That's their job. But you always find out more doing it yourself.
For sure. And this reminds me of like a car salesman or going for a test drive. I was talking to Steve Melder in his episode that there's a particular car that I'm really excited to have, but I know it's horrible on freeways, especially when it's windy. But Steve was saying it was great off road, and I'm thinking I should take it for a test drive. But I know they're not going to let me go on a highway. They're not going to let me on a freeway. They're going to manipulate the drive to show the car off in its best light.
You'd put them up in the hotel in the city. You'd helicopter them to the high country. You'd drive on some great off-road tracks and then helicopter them all back to the city. That would be how you'd do that as a press officer, because then you're not letting the journos drive the car on the road, on the highway. You're showing off its best light. But then, as a content provider, you've got to be upfront and say, we had a very limited drive in this car. And that's where obviously the week-long review is so much more beneficial, because I can drive it wherever I want, however I want, under my circumstances.
Just to jump back onto your career, you were saying that, there was a bit of reshuffling over your career. Was that due to the shrinking magazine industry and I guess it moving to more online?
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I did work experience with Wheels, for instance, there was editor, deputy editor, production editor, staff journalist, designer, deputy designer on staff, or sub-editor. Yep, so that's 8 people, and then a healthy roster of freelancers. Wheels now, I don't mean to throw them under the bus because I still do some work for them and they're great people, but Wheels recently has been an editor, a designer, and some limited freelance budget. So in 15 years, the staffing has gone down by like 80%, and you're expected to produce the same thing. The page count. I mean, what really hurt us at Motor when they decided to go from 12 issues a year, so monthly, to 13, which was every 4 weeks. It might sound like a small thing, but it eradicated any fat we had. It just became into an absolute hamster wheel, and we, got less and less money each week. So yeah, it's been really tough. Headcounts keep shrinking, budgets keep shrinking. When I went on my first press launch, right, all I had to do was produce like a 500-word review for the magazine 2 weeks later, right? Now I would go and there'd be a 1,500-word probably online review. As a freelancer, hopefully there's a couple, because it means I'm getting paid more, due within a week at least, probably within a few days. Video as well on the ground, social media as well on the ground, which not complaining about. It's fine, it's part of the role, but the level of production required from a typical press launch has probably gone up 250 to 300%.
And you're doing all this yourself?
So typically, as I mentioned, you fly somewhere, you go on a press launch, you drive the car, they'll have a slot allocated to each person for video, 15 minutes, half an hour, etc., for you to deliver what you got to deliver, which brings its own challenges because you haven't driven the car very much, etc., but that's probably a conversation for another day. And then you come away from it, you turn around the copy as sort of quickly as you can, and they'll provide B-roll, so extra footage. They'll provide stock footage of the car, 10, 15, 20 minutes worth for everyone to use, and same with the images. So if I'm going as a freelancer for myself, I will then edit the video, put the copy, put the pictures and stuff like that. Otherwise, I'd turn the footage over to, say, the car sales editor if I was working for car sales, and they would stitch the video together.
Okay, that's a relief for me in a way if I was thinking about doing this, because I can do some video stuff, but I'm not too sure if I could film a car review just yet.
No, they typically at a launch they'll have a professional team there to help you, and all the stuff tends to be pre-shot, which does make life easier.
Well, just talking about the shrinking industry, do you think there's a strong future in motor journalism?
Yeah, I think there is still. I think the changes are still coming. AI will be a threat and an opportunity, depending on how people use it.
I imagine it'll be churning out content, but it's going to be churning out the content the manufacturers want?
Yeah, sort of. It's a case of I'm a bit of a Luddite and I'm quite anti-AI. I'm trying not to be, because I'm trying to, see it as, the opportunity, and it's inevitable, really. On a very basis level, for instance, if you go on a website and there's like a little synopsis at the top that gives you like a précis of what you're about to read, like AI is really good there. You write the article, you write the review and go, give me a 150-word précis that I can put at the top of the article, because I hate writing those things. Just time I don't need to spend. And stuff like manufacturers issue press releases. Oh, we're about to release XYZ new car. AI could probably do a pretty good job of writing a 400-word news story, summarizing that, which is bad because someone is currently paid to do that, whereas AI can probably do it in half the time and get a pretty good result. And that's my issue at the moment, is AI is a good way of getting a mediocre result quickly, but it's improving all the time. People have sent me stuff there. My good mate of mine, one of my best mates, he's really into AI, and he sent me articles that he's punched in. Write this article on these two cars in the voice of Scott Newman. I don't know whether to be flattered or offended because it goes out and scours all my things and tries to copy my voice. And I don't know if it does a very good job, or maybe scarily it does a very good job. But then I think there will be an opportunity in that once we get down that road and there's a whole lot of AI stuff out there, people may want, both manufacturers and consumers may want something more creative, something more human, something different. So there's probably opportunities there, but I think it will change and it's hard to see what that looks like at the moment.
Okay, we'll have to wade our way through it. You've loved this industry that you've worked in for a while now. What keeps you coming back to your desk every day and writing reviews?
Love of the process and love of the topic, I think. I have loved this industry. There's been times where I've been lucky to have that pause and reset, and the redundancy was that. No one ever chooses a redundancy, right? Or some people do, but I would not have left that job probably of my own volition. It was a very good job. They treated me very well. Redundancy was what it was. It was just corporate stuff. These things happen. But it forced a reset and an evaluation of, I was probably a bit burnt out. It wasn't a difficult job. I'm not saving anyone's life, but it was pressure and churn and stuff like that. So it forced a reevaluation, which is good. I think that's healthy in any industry. And it can be hard when you love what you do to take a step back because you're like, oh, I love this. This is how I earn money. I don't want to stop doing it. But I think it is really important to step back and go and reevaluate. What are your priorities? What do I like about it? What do I not like about it? It's really important. If you're doing it to drive fancy cars, don't do it. You're not going to like this job. There are other ways to drive fancy cars if you want to drive fancy cars. You have to love the process of dissecting a car, reviewing a car. I just basically love the car industry. I'm fascinated by how these things are put together, by the decisions that are made, by the people in the industry. I obviously love driving. That's probably my key to. I love driving. Like I'm a driving enthusiast, probably more than I'm a car enthusiast. Like if you gave me the keys to a Ferrari and said I could only drive it around the city, or gave me the keys to a good car like an MX-5, a much cheaper car, and I could drive it wherever I wanted, I'd take the MX-5 every day. Like I've got no interest in just driving a car around at 50 k's an hour just to say I've driven it. Whereas some people are like that. That's cool. That's absolutely fine. If they want to be seen in a Lamborghini and that really excites them, fantastic. But you're not necessarily reviewing a car then, are you?
Any stand-up memories over your career so far? Obviously, driving some cool cars has to be up there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been very, very lucky. Standout memories was I went on an international launch with Porsche in 2016 and I met my sort of all-time driving hero, a man named Walter Röhrl. He was two-time World Rally Champion. He's one of the best drivers who's ever lived. He's not a household name in the sense that Ayrton Senna is or Michael Schumacher, but he's every bit as good. He took me for a drive. I had dinner with him. I met him. It's probably one of my most cherished memories.
And you've had a positive meet your heroes moment.
He was very nice to me, and I was just one of the very many people he meets that come up and say, you're my hero and stuff like that. But it was really nice to meet him. The Bend in South Australia, I've been driven around that in an Audi R8 by 9-time Le Mans winner Tom Christensen. I've had rides in World Rally cars with World Rally drivers. I've driven pretty much every high-end performance car of the last 15 years. I've been very fortunate in that sense through my role with motor. Some people have to wait a long time for their first Porsche and stuff like that. Again, I was very, very lucky. Like Nathan Ponchard gave me a lot of rope very, very early, and I didn't hang myself with it. Again, some people have to wait years to do, and some outlets have policies. You've got to earn your stripes driving hatchbacks and SUVs before you get to drive something fair. Within 3 months, I was in like 600 horsepower Nissan GDRs for a week and stuff like that, and I drove them and drove them and drove them, and thankfully survived. And just great time, some great stories as well to tell. Looking back and cherishing some of those memories, because great cars are awesome, but great cars with great people and in great locations are even better. Like if you've got an idea that's what I really missed at car sales. And that's maybe actually one of the things I love the most about the industry, to go back to your last question, is idea creation and then delivering on that idea. Like I'll give you an example of probably the coolest thing I've ever done was we pitched to Honda and said they had a new NSX out, really cutting edge hybrid supercar. So I wanted to drive it to Strathgordon, which is a big dam that creates hydropower in Tasmania. The road there is amazing. It's an amazing road, amazing scenery through the centre of Tassie. And at the end, I guess the hook of the story was taking this new hybrid, so green supercar, you use less emissions, but something that's still very powerful, to Strathgordon, something else that creates green power that's also very powerful. Maybe it's a slightly tenuous link, but we got amazing photography. It was a fantastic drive. We got to tell a story. We got to tell something different that isn't just a car review. Honda loved it. It was an amazing day. You get to write something, create something that is a lot more than just car XYZ. And that was the struggle at car sales for me personally a little bit was, Google is king. So you tend to write to a template. Every car review is set out the same. It takes away a lot of the creativity. In this industry, you need that creative buzz. So telling those stories is really, really good.
And you had some great memories too. To flip to the other side of the coin, what's your most spectacular failure?
I've been very lucky that I haven't had too many. There's been some very close. A spectacular failure in this industry probably means it could mean a couple of things. It could mean a verdict I got really wrong. I don't think there's been too many of those, with the risk of sounding like I'm tooting my own horn. I'm pretty confident that most of my car reviews still stack up. If you read them now, like I wouldn't say something was a rotten egg and it turned out to be brilliant or vice versa. There's always certain cars that maybe I should have been harder on or easier on, but I don't think so. Spectacular failures in this industry tends to mean crashing cars.
Okay. And you haven't crashed any cars?
I have. I've only mildly dented one, which I was on a video shoot. And sadly, it was a privately owned one, but it all got sorted out. It was very limited damage, thankfully, and it was the famous last just one more. It was literally the last run of the day. And then the photographer and video said, "Oh, just do one more." And I should have said no because we had everything we needed. But I did just one more and just overcorrected slightly and nudged the bank. Thankfully, it was easily rectified and the bill was taken care of by my very understanding boss at the time. Look, no one wants to crash a car, especially if you're doing performance cars. If you drive for 15 years in a performance manner, on track, on road, in powerful machines, 40, 50,000 Ks a year, law of averages is going to catch up with you eventually. There's going to be a day where you feel sick or you're tired, you hit mud, you hit whatever. And even stability control can't always save you. I've never had a big one. I've certainly had some wild moments over the years that I was lucky to get away with. Some were my fault, some weren't.
Mm-hmm.
A $1 million Lamborghini Aventador went home in a tow truck once because the engine went bang.
Oh, wow.
Stuff like that. Yeah, I haven't had any spectacular failures. There must be all still to come.
Well, that's not a bad thing. What don't you like about motoring journalism? We've spoken about the shrinking industry, but anything else?
What don't I like about motoring journalism? I don't like Google first templated way we produce most of the content. I don't like the fact that we have less time to do a proper job. I don't like the increasing restrictions on the cars, which is there's a lot more control around the cars and how they're used than when I first started. And I understand it to an extent because these are expensive. No one wants to see a car broken or crashed or anything like that. But I mean, when I started, it was a bit of a free-for-all. Here's the car and off you go, really. If you want to take it on a track, take it on a track. Just look after it. Now it's a case of the insurance excesses are very, very big. You're not meant to, use this mode or that mode, or don't use the car like this or that or the other. They are assets that need to be then on-sold. I'm a bit frustrated by some of the restrictions. It's also getting harder just because I'm not trying to give the impression that we're trying to race around everywhere, but speed limits keep coming down, urban sprawl, like some of the roads that I used to love using for testing a car. There were 100 limit, had some nice twists and turns in them. You could get a good read on a car in that time frame, whether it be a sports car or a normal SUV or something like that. Whereas now that might be 80 or 60. You've got to go further and further and further and further to find those good places. So that's a bit of a frustration. I hope the manufacturers continue to value a healthy journalism media industry and support that. And they tend to, but they tend to want to do it more by sponsoring content or having content rather than advertising. And then that leads to murkiness of, is this proper media objective journalism or is it just a paid advert?
And my 2 cents there is a lot of companies like to manipulate and control their messaging, but the most effective advertising they can do is what you're seeing on social media, where a fan is just creating their own content and it goes nuts and has way more of a positive outcome for the company, but they're too bound by corporate policy or internal policies where they just won't allow that to happen until someone goes rogue and it does a unsolicited review, let's say, and it goes nuts. I would love to see companies in general just to relax a little bit and take advantage of people who love what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my view on it has always kind of been advertising buys you the coverage, not the verdict. I think that if you've got a magazine or an outlet and you've got a major advertiser, I think it's fair and reasonable then that, if you have to do a drive story or something like that, or you want to do a special feature, that maybe you consider using that, that company supporting you. Okay, so say Toyota buy a big advertising contract with me. I need to do a drive story. Okay, I'll use a Land Cruiser instead of maybe a Nissan Patrol because they're supporting me. But then I'll just write the story, right? I can afford to go and do that story because I've got this great advertising budget. I've used a Toyota to give my major advertiser some ROI on that. But if the car's rubbish, I still get to write it's rubbish. And I don't want you to come to me and then go, oh, we're going to all pull our advertising. Like, that's the risk you take. Back your product. You've either got faith in your product or you don't. And to use that Honda example I used in Tassie, for instance, that wasn't a paid thing at all. There was no they weren't an advertiser at the time. We wanted to do it for the car. But to your point, I remember the PR guy telling me later, because we did a good story, we got a cover. It ended up on a special subscribers cover we did. It was something like a 60 times ROI or something. The metric was huge for what they got out of it compared to what they spent the car down for us. There was a cost associated with that, but we paid our flights. They didn't chip in that sense. So I think that's a good example of yours. Like, the best return for them came from an idea that, was natural. So Honda, buy a 12-month ad contract and, we can do these ideas then. We can do these natural ideas that get you a better result.
That's a dream. Scott, you've helped me learn a lot about being a motoring journalist from someone who test drives and writes about cars to somebody who buys and sells them for a living. Steve Melder is a car buyer's or seller's advocate. That means he'll buy or sell a car on your behalf. He'll do all the running around. He'll meet people. He'll make sure that if you're buying a car, it's the car that you're going to get. Check it out mechanically, roadworthy, that sort of thing. If you're going to buy a lemon, he'll let you know you're buying a lemon. You have free will. You can go through with it. But at least with Steve, you'll know. If you want someone to buy or sell a car on your behalf, go to the website workexperiencekit.com, hit the guests tab and find Steve Melder's name. Now, Scott, I want to learn a little bit more about your job and specifically see if I could do it, if I have the skills, or also if I want to do it. You're a freelance motoring journalist now. So it might be a little bit difficult to run through, say, like a day-to-day when you're like a full-time role. But what does a typical day or typical week look like?
The content I do is very, very different since I've gone freelance. It's funny in that I've spent the first 14 years of my life reviewing cars and being known for reviewing cars and being, my role was road test editor. I was employed for my speciality. And then since I've gone freelance, probably 5% max of my paid income has been actually reviewing a car.
Right.
I'm in conversations with a couple of outlets to hopefully do more of that because that's what I do love to do. A lot of the content now I get paid to do is back-end stuff. The stuff that really generates volume traffic for SEO, whether that be for a manufacturer. It's still weird to do work for a manufacturer, and I've still got to wrestle with that a little bit. If I get back into reviewing more cars, I'll probably cease that work. Even if I'm amazing and there's no conflict of interest, it's the potential for perceived conflict of interest. I'm still reviewing cars, and then I've done some stuff under my own banner. I started up my own Substack. I've had my own YouTube channel and stuff like that. But it's become clear that that's probably going to be hobby money or pocket money if at the best. I do that because I still enjoy it and I like creating content and I want to drive cars. My paid work now is, so essentially the day is, like most people, fire up the laptop. Hopefully I've got a list of work to get through and I just sit there tapping away, writing content for whoever's asked me to write content for them. I've done some cool stuff, but a lot of it tends to be quite dry and maybe the work that I've just railed against, to a template, just meat and potatoes, facts and figures, no real creativity in it. I try and still put a bit of life into the copy, but that's what's required. And then, as a freelancer, the first question I ask now is, what do you need me to do? My job now is to serve my client. So if you've got a need, I can always say no, but I'm happy to do it.
You fire up your laptop in the morning. Who might you be working with day to day? And obviously every job's different, but who might you be expecting an email from, and then who might you call upon or work with?
I do some video work for a luxury car dealership down here called Lawbeck. So maybe I do work with them. There's a videographer there called Ben. He's a great guy. So I work with him. If I'm going to shoot one of those videos, he'll just let me know, 2 weeks, we've got these 2 cars we need shooting on. So I rock up with my scripts prepared and we do our thing. In general, it's not much. It's generally via email. So I'll get an email brief from somebody. We need this. It's nice if I can get over the next month, 2 months, 3 months, we need this amount of copy. Work your way through it, because then I don't have to deal with anyone. I know what I've got to do. I just keep churning through it as I go. That's always nice, because it also, as a freelancer, then you're like, oh, good, I've got a bit of work for the next few months, or next few weeks at least. As a freelancer, it's potentially quite a solitary existence, which I don't mind. But it is nice if I'm out on a shoot with someone to work with someone else occasionally.
I want to move on to any valuable advice you've received.
Nathan Ponchard, he was really, really important early on in terms of setting standards. That's probably, if I talk about one of the struggles of the industry now, is people do a good job, but standards have definitely slipped in terms of accuracy. And that's directly related to headcount. Once we had dedicated sub-editors to make sure copy was clean, facts were checked, things were accurate. That is now not necessarily always the case. And he was a real stickler of everything was checked, everything was double checked. Don't take their word for it. Don't believe a press kit. That's one of my favourite things, is finding errors in press kits. The famous one, to give you an example, for instance, there was a period there where Mercedes, in their sporty models, they put 6.3 on the side because that was a famous historical link. Like one of their older cars that became very famous had a 6.3 litre V8. It was very powerful at the time. So they reintroduced it and they put 6.3 on the cars, but they didn't add a 6.2 litre V8.
Oh.
So, don't believe it. And things like, it's not about what you like and don't like, it's about the car. I'm terribly unfashionable. So he's like, there's a way you got to dress, there's a way you got to present yourself. Conduct on launches and stuff like that. That was partly learned over time, just, maturing and growing up. Especially when I was at car sales, I was very aware of this, because you are a cog in a publicly listed multi-billion-dollar company. On my YouTube channel with its whatever subscribers, I can say what I want, right? It's my name above the door. It's on me. Mm-hmm. But I think when you're representing a company, your conduct should change. Well, not so you should always be professional and stuff like that, but it's my choice then if I want to rock up and it's appropriate, if I feel it's appropriate, I can rock up in a hoodie and jeans, right? But if I'm representing car sales, I should be wearing the car sales shirt, I should be well dressed, etc., etc. I think that's just, not everyone does that. So I guess just a lot of it's just lessons learned over time, how to treat machinery. I'm probably a bit easier on it than I once was, with a bit more respect perhaps for the machinery. Not that I ever abused it, but especially if you're on a track, you don't need to do 50 laps if 15 will do, even though 50 is more fun. But so just little things like that. I think it's probably called growing up.
You've had some good advice over the years. What advice would you give to someone, for example, me, wanting to become a journalist, or maybe specifically a motoring journalist?
In terms of getting into the industry, make contacts to, get into the industry. Once you're in the industry, make time to make contacts. Make yourself known to the PRs. The power of a coffee or a lunch cannot be underestimated. A lot of good opportunities, a lot of good relationships have come about from simple catch-up chats. You're going to pick up a car, make time to have a coffee, or even just a chat with the PR. Because so much comes from just personal relationship. It's a trope that, it's who you know, not what you know, but it really works out.
I think that networking thing I think everyone should take advantage of that advice.
I learned a lot about the other side of the industry from people who work in manufacturers. There's a lot I don't understand. I think it would be very valuable if young journalists and young PRs did a job swap for 3 months or 6 months. I think it would benefit both of them greatly in terms of understanding how the other side approaches things and the challenges involved in that. Apart from that, be professional, be objective, Make a name for yourself with the quality of your work, not by being overtly loud. Like if you drive a car that's rubbish, if a car's rubbish, don't go, this is my time to make a name for myself. I'm going to really go in hard and make the YouTube thumbnail, disaster, death trap, stuff like that.
I feel like they're good skills or traits to have as a journalist in general.
Yeah, probably. I mean, that's another thing. It's like I call myself a motoring journalist. I'm comfortable with the term and always have been. Like, one of my lecturers at uni was a journalist, John Martinkus. And he was a war correspondent. He went to Afghanistan and Iraq and Papua New Guinea. Like, he's a journalist. I'm a motoring content creator. I do videos about cars. I'm not reporting on, bombings and murders and stuff like that. Those journalists are journalists, okay? They're doing real proper work. And I'm not saying that what we do is not without value, but it is, yeah, I think the journalist term is maybe something we need to drop, and perhaps we're, content creators.
I think journalism as a whole, as you're saying, your career has evolved from putting words on page to being a bit more multimedia. So I think journalism in general is more of a content creation thing. Would you do anything different if you're starting again?
Like I said, I've been very, very lucky, even by the standards of the industry, that things have fallen my way a lot. I met the right people, and I'm proud of the fact that I took advantage of those opportunities, but they moved my dream magazine to my office. There are certainly things I could have done probably differently, but I think in the whole I've done okay, and those things that maybe I came up short with were necessary for the learnings they created. The one thing I should have done more is maybe, there's two sides to it. My personality, especially when I was younger, was push, 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 which was good, I think, and helpful in many respects at the risk of burnout. Now I'm a bit older and look back and go, maybe I should have appreciated the moment a bit more, which all went through all the way through car sales as well. Like I was always looking at what's next, what can I drive next, having the FOMO of missing out on X, Y, Z, and just accepting that things are still pretty good. But equally, you can look back and it's all done.
One last question before I ask you to give me a trial. And I think I know your answer from something you've said earlier in the interview, but what might you ask someone who wants to become a motoring journalist to see if they should become one? You mentioned that it's not an industry or a job for somebody who just wants to drive fast.
The motives are key. I don't think it's something you can uncover with a question. It's probably what you're already doing in a bid to get into the industry. Do you have a blog or a Instagram page or something like that I can look at where you're sharing your thoughts about the car industry or creating some content? Because that's the advantage you've got now, is you don't have to be employed by someone. My job interview was submitting stuff I'd written because that was important back then. Whereas now you've got so many opportunities to create your own content. Like you could create a really successful YouTube channel without driving any cars by just learning some basic video editing skills and putting together some videos about new cars that come out.
Do you think Top Gear has been good or bad for this sort of thing? I see a lot of my Instagram algorithm is not very car heavy, but a lot of them I see are trying to be a Top Gear vibe. Is that to blame, Top Gear?
I think Top Gear was enormously important and influential and positive for car journalism to raise its profile. The mistake would be trying to be those guys and do what they did, because they can't, because they are the very, very, very best. Because what's not really understood is that these guys, particularly James May and Jeremy Clarkson, were long-time, very successful motoring journalists before they got to Top Gear. They'd already honed their craft. They knew what they were doing. They knew how to review a car. They knew how to present. And they were exceptionally good at it. So don't try and be those guys. Maybe learn from it, learn by being the best you can be, but don't try and be Jeremy Clarkson with his bombastic takes and he got away with that stuff because he was very, very good at what he did and knew what he was talking about and had a huge profile. So you're not going to get famous by trying to be Jeremy Clarkson or successful necessarily. Or like I said, you find a car that's subpar and you try to make your name out of it by being, this is the worst car in the world.
This is echoing some advice from Ed Kalishaw and Matty Turner, basically just saying, be yourself. Like, especially if you're performing, you've made friends because of who you are. You're not making friends because of who you're trying to be.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, especially on video. Video sucks the personality out of you. you do need to be an exaggerated caricature of yourself on film, I think, to be engaging, which all those guys were. They were themselves, but if you sat down with any of them, and I'm lucky to know people that know them, but they'll tell you this themselves. Like, they are exaggerated versions of themselves on screen to be more entertaining. But so to get back to your questions, so the body of, I'd now look at the body of work, and if you didn't have that, I'd ask questions, because you've got to love the content creation as much as you love the subject matter, and you do have to love the subject matter. You should be as excited. There's cars that I really want to drive at the moment, right? I really want to drive the new Ferrari 12 Cilindri because it looks amazing. But I'm also really interested in the new Renault Duster, which is like with a 6-speed manual. It's 32 grand. It's kind of this little cute little off-roady sort of thing. I'm not excited about everything, and you don't have to be excited about everything. I could review everything, but there are cars that excite me across the gamut. You can't, if the only cars that excite you are the ones that start at $500,000 and 700 horsepower, you might struggle in this industry. If you're going to get excited about a genre of cars, get excited about family SUVs, because you'll make a hell of a lot more money and get a hell of a lot more work driving and writing about those than you will about the fancy stuff. But the fancy stuff's really nice too, don't get me wrong.
All right, so Scott, this whole thing is about me trying out different jobs in different industries. I'd love to give your job a go. Do you have a task that I could do to see if I have what it takes to become a motoring journalist?
Well, do you have a car?
I have a car.
Then you can review that car. It can be just a verbal review. Come back to me, give me a 3-minute, 5-minute, whatever it might be, synopsis of your car, what it does well, what it doesn't do well, and why, and essentially, why someone should or shouldn't buy it, because that's effectively the whole thing. It's, as I said, it's the performance of intended function. What is your car meant to do? Does it do a good job at fulfilling that role? And therefore, how likely would you be to recommend it to someone?
That sounds good. And what does a good job look like?
Okay, so you have to identify what your car's trying to do and what someone might need from it, and how it might, for instance, does it need to be, is it a sports car? Does it need to be powerful and engaging? Is it a everyday car that needs to be perhaps economical and easy to drive? Is it meant to carry passengers? If it's meant to carry passengers, how easy is it to get in and out of? How comfortable is each person in that car? If it's meant to carry 2 people, does it have enough luggage for 2 people, 4 people? Are there traits in the car that annoy you? Is it too uncomfortable? Is it too noisy? Do you find you have to put conscious thought into driving the car, or does it make your life easier? Does, when you're turning, when you're trying to keep up with traffic, when you're cruising on the highway? Does the stereo give you your favourite songs clearly, or does it keep cutting out and crackling? So stuff like that.
Okay, lovely. That sounds good. I'm going to give my Corolla a run through. Do you have any advice before I start getting my hands dirty in the trial?
No, I think you'll nail it.
Not being a traditional car enthusiast, I feel like this might be a bit of a challenge for me. All of the challenges so far have been quite challenging for me, but I'm happy to give this a go, and I look forward to hearing your feedback.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I look forward to hearing your thoughts, and thanks very much for having me on the pod.
My pleasure, Scott. It was so good chatting with you and learning all about what you do. The trial episode will be published directly after this one, so subscribe to the pod so it lands directly in your podcast feed. Give it a 5-star review while you're at it as well. Why not? I'd love to see it. To get involved in the pod, support the pod, see guests on the pod, visit workexperiencekid.com.